All right, I just finished up the Black Tusk invasion. That is the post-game content in the Division 2. It is on the disc. It was no DLC. It was no kind of any paid expansion. It was included in the game. And I have to say, and I really do believe this, this was probably the best in terms of decided post-game content I have really ever played. I think Ubisoft learned so much from the somewhat failure of the original Division, of seeing what Destiny had, of seeing what these other games as a service had, and they really took it to heart. And this is so fun that I really feel like it's an entirely new game, which is why I decided to dedicate an entirely separate video to it. If you didn't get a chance to see my thoughts on what I am calling as the base game, which is your beginning of the game on disc up through level 30, I'll post a link to that specific video in the description box below. This video covers everything post that through the end of the Black Tusk invasion. There's a lot to do here. There's a lot to unpack here. All I can honestly say is this. If you made it this far in your journey with the Division 2, don't stop. You are going to absolutely love this content. They took everything that made the base portion of the game work, and they added more to it. They made the missions more fun. They made the enemies more ruthless. They added new enemies. They added in additional customizations for your character. A lot of really cool things, and I can't say enough good about it. If you take nothing else from this video, know that I'm a huge fan of this, and this gets me incredibly excited for if there is ever a Division 3, which I think we all assume there will be. It gets me incredibly excited to think that this was just the first attempt at this, and you know it's going to get better. All right, so after you hit the kind of the end of the core game, when you've defeated the three main gangs that have been cycling around the greater Washington, D.C. area, the Black Tusk instantly swoops in and basically takes over. It's an entirely new set of enemies to defeat. They are much more militarized. They are much greater in numbers. They are much more organized, and they have new units to fight. You'll be fighting against like walker robots and rolling turrets and drones, and the way grenade launchers, rocket launchers, the way the enemies fight you is very different than everything you played up to this point. So it is really an entirely new game. It seems like not just throwing more AI, but more complex AI really has changed how this experience played out for me. I did solo all of this content, but I had a much harder time fighting enemies in this, not just because obviously they're harder, but they were much smarter at flanking me and setting up cover fire and really doing their best to make my life miserable. And you'll see I do die a few times through here. This was no joke. This was very difficult. Now, this is from the ultimate final last mission, but they all play like this. They're very complex. To help you along the way, though, you're going to get some really cool customizations. First and foremost, you're going to get to be able to kind of pick a specialty. Now, I picked one that gives me this new type of weapon, this very powerful explosive crossbow, which really is great to clear out enemies. If you hit somebody in the direct hit with them, it does a significant amount of damage. It also has like an area of effect fire damage. It's very explosive. It's a real game changer, and I love that it has extremely limited ammo. You can pick up ammo just by hitting regular enemies with your gun. You'll see that new meter off to the left of my ammo count. That will allow me to get additional ammo essentially for free. You can also loot it as well to pick it up, but you're going to be able to have a lot of these game-changing moments. You know, you have to use them at the right time, but it's a big deal. Now, there are other specializations too, but I think this one was just played particularly well to my play style. So you're going to have a whole slew of new missions and objectives to take on to unlock that skill tree as well, with new passive bonuses and new perks that are going to make you, even more tough, because you're going to need it. You're also going to see that there's a new world meter that has taken over, and it's going to be like this world level that automatically raises up the difficulty of all the enemies around you. The higher the world level, the harder the enemies, but also the better the loot. So there's a risk and reward there in terms of kind of like, you know, what mission you're going to take on at what level. You're also going to notice that gear score suddenly makes an appearance the second you beat the core game. All of your guns now will have a very definitized gear score, and there are new customizations for your character in terms of synergies and like weapon sets. Think of like Diablo, where you pick up and wear two of the same piece of gear that does something. You're going to be able to really specialize your character if you want to specialize more in offense, you know, offensive output or overall health or knockback damage. There's different perks that allow you to really customize your character just to what you like. I think up until this point, most people are trained just to pick up the gun that does the most damage and to pick up the armor that's the most defensive. But as you get up to this point, a lot of the armor is samey in terms of the actual damage output. You're really looking at those perks, and you can spend currency to re-roll and re-specialize to even further make your character an elite fighting machine. It's a very in-depth system that I don't think is absolutely required for you to beat the game, but I think it helps a ton because you're going to be able to, you know what you're best at and put yourself in those situations to give yourself the best chance of success. I think that's really, really a lot of fun. In terms of the actual missions and world design, now this is the only part that frustrates me a little bit. You will be going back to the same old areas that you've been to before and before and before again. You're going to be fighting just Black Tusk guys. So some of the same areas you just liberated, you have to go back and do again. How they work the system is you kind of have to unlock. You have to take out strongholds and hubs to kind of chip away at the main enemy building, which is something new. You don't just like walk right up to the final level of the game. You have to take out all their supply stations and strongholds and fortifications to work your way up to them, which was very interesting. It made you feel much more engaged with the world. You know, like you were actually making a difference. There are random events that even though you have taken over something, the Black Tusk can put down these blockades, which will lock out certain strongholds that you have unlocked, or I'm sorry, safe houses that you've unlocked that you have to go back. Some of your settlements and stuff will be under constant siege. And it's fun because it makes the world feel more dynamic, but it also really kind of, I think, emphasizes that the Black Tusk, unlike the other enemies that you fought, you know, like the hyenas or, you know, the True Sons or whatever, these guys really mean business, and they push back, which was fun. It was very different. I think taking those systems and putting them in the base game probably would have been a little too much for players because people would be like, I just cleared this, why do I have to do this again? But I think at this point, you know, getting this deep into the game, you really are a super fan, and you're looking for more content, and this definitely gives you plenty of content as well. So I can understand why they saved it for the end, but just know that the game feels very different at the end. Besides those missions that you have to partake on, though, the actual kind of unique story missions, and there's 3 of them that are really distinctly different, will require you to do different things, like blow up helicopters that are like parked, or you know, hack into a computer or something like that. And they do feel samey, but at the same time, I think they feel more epic. They feel more like it matters more. And I'm not talking just Manny Ortega yelling in your ear, telling you, you know, trying to get you hyped up, like, oh God, Agent, you gotta do that. No, I mean just in general, like, I feel like the game did a much better job of making everything feel like it mattered. And I like that. And I think by the end of this game, if you really were following the plot, and if you're not, you're still going to have fun. But you'll appreciate it much more when you understand some of the twists and turns of the characters, when you understand some of the, you know, like, not everybody's who you think they are. There are some traitors out there. You will be betrayed. The Division will be betrayed. Like, once you understand that, I think it puts even more emphasis on some of these cleanup missions. So the story does, I think, you know, really kind of bookend itself well, and I think it paints the Black Tusk as a serious threat, which is cool. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the future we don't get, you know, another Black Tusk meet with them at some point in Division 3 or whatever. I don't feel like they're quite done here. You don't necessarily get like a true like end credits you know, by completing it. There's no like happy ending per se. I mean, they basically say your work is never done, and then that's when all these new things open up, including raids, which I haven't gotten to quite yet. But there's still more to do. There's still specific areas that you could hunt for specific pieces of gear that they call loot hunts. There are bounties where there are randomly kind of generated enemies that are incredibly difficult roaming the city streets that you could take down. There's still a lot to do, and this could be your daily login game and continue to play. There's still a lot of dynamic content. Keep in mind that I still haven't even dived into Warlords of New York, but I do believe that to be more story focused. I could be wrong, and I'll review that at some point and play it at some point, you know, to talk to you guys about it. But if you just pick up the Division 2 only and do nothing else, this game will keep you occupied for an incredibly long amount of time. And it's not in a way that like Assassin's Creed Origins kept you occupied for a long time, or really Valhalla, I think, is the one that like a lot of people will generally agree was just way too bloated. I feel like this game has enough uniqueness to it where it isn't just the same thing. Yes, it is a running game. Yes, it is a third-person cover game. Yes, you're going to shoot, you know, a zillion enemies, but the targets become different. I mean, you saw me struggling there with that rocket launcher a minute or two ago, trying to figure out what the heck to shoot, because I'm not used to seeing it. So they do add in new things. The enemy types are different. You're not just going to fight just big armored guys running at you with sledgehammers. You are going to fight enemies that have different types of grenades and different types of, you know, attacks, and it's cool. It's really well done. I don't know, you know, going in the future, you know, Ubisoft did say that they were kind of done with this game. They did say we're kind of putting the Division on ice. You know, we appreciate everything, and then they released a statement maybe a week or two ago. By the time I'm recording this today on April 3rd, 2021, it's like a week or two ago. They released a statement basically saying, hey, we're not done yet. We're going to come back to the game, and we want to keep making more stuff. And I'm like, great. This is great value for, you know, just a core game that is like $10 right now on PlayStation Store or Amazon. You can get this game incredibly dirt cheap, but don't sleep on it. Put the time into it, invest in it, understand the story, understand the characters, understand the plot, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. And I think, you know, it does feel like a great level of satisfaction. Honestly, in a game I haven't felt before. I mean, and I played a lot of Destiny with my friend Sid. I think we logged over 1,000 hours of Destiny, you know, at the end doing end game raids with, like, you know, Crota and all that stuff, House of Glass. And I still don't really feel like that was as satisfying, honestly, as some of these things I'm doing in the Division. So I'm no stranger to kind of this end game, you know, difficulty spike or whatever, but this just felt really well done, and I'm super excited. You know, the only criticism I could honestly give about it, looking back on my experience with the game, I don't know how many hours I've logged at this point, easily over 100. The only criticism I can give of just the base Division game, to kind of wrap up this video, I wish they had put a little better effort into the PlayStation 5 port. There are still a lot of lighting and texture issues that I find routinely. Some of the smoke and particle effects just don't really feel quite right. Some of the textures are just off, and I know they can be better. I don't think there are any plans to go back and look at that, unfortunately, and I understand it is an older game, but as with a lot of these quote-unquote transition games that really came out right on the cusp of the, you know, the final year or so of the PlayStation 4 into PlayStation 5, especially since they have been very vocal in saying, yes, we will be adding more content to it. I think that's the one thing that may hurt it for people. I think some people may look at it and go, oh, it's super pretty, it's nice 60 frames a second, the sound effects are phenomenal, the gunplay is really world-class, the gear, all this stuff, but then you're going to have these weird little bugs. You'll know what I'm talking about when you play it, and you'll be like, ooh, like that really was just a major immersion breaking, and I kind of hope that maybe they can work on that, although I don't know. It might just be one of those things that we'll just have to wait for the proper next generation port, essentially. But yeah, man, this was a really gem to play. It's going to go down as one of my all-time favorites. I'm still playing it. I still want to go back and do some more. I don't know if I'll quote-unquote platinum it. There's a lot to take in. Maybe I'll dabble with the raids. I would definitely like to and will spend some time in the future playing through the Warlords of New York expansion to see what that's about. But as the base game goes, you really can't do wrong with this game. So if you haven't already played it, get a buddy, and check it out. And I promise you guys are going to have an absolute blast. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my deep dive of the Division Black Tusk Invasion content. And take care of yourselves. That's it for me. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.